Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. One of the things that I like to do at the end of each season is reflect back on the baits that were productive for that previous year to see if there's things that maybe I need to work on. Maybe there's baits that I need to get. Maybe it's just one of those things where nothing really surprised me. And with respect to the 2024 season, it was really dominated by the jig head minnow. I think we all know that at this point. uh, but one of the other baits that I feel like made a true comeback, like really established itself as a bait that we're going to have in our arsenal all year long, all around the country, for all species of bass, is the jerk bait. You know, this guy right here has become such a player in our arsenal. And, when I look back at the season, it was no surprise to see the jighead minnow do well. In fact, I actually called the jighead minnow my comeback bait of the year for 2023 because, all of a sudden everyone's out there just throwing a straight tail minnow with a ball head. And that very, very much continued into 2024. But what we've seen a lot of people do is add to their arsenal with the jerkbait. And I think a lot of people could argue that the jerkbait really had a good comeback in 2023, and it did. The thing with it now, though, is it has really been dialed into being a year-round bait no matter where you're at in the country. In 2023, with forward-facing sonar really starting to take stronghold at that point, we saw a lot of anglers that were utilizing a jerkbait still much more in like the cold water period. There may have been a handful of guys that were utilizing it year round, but it was not as mainstream now. Now, when you head out on the water, if you're in a professional level tournament, it does not matter where you're at. It does not matter time of year. You're going to see guys with at least one jerk bait as well as one jig head minnow on the deck of their boat. I mean, that's a minimum of one. For me, if I look back at some of the tournaments this year, I mean, we saw places like Lake Fork get one on it. We saw places like the Showan River basically get one on it or close to one on it. There were a lot of guys throwing it there. The James River, that was a summer tournament. Guys were fishing it. Guys were catching them really good up on the St. Lawrence River with it. It doesn't matter. It really truly does not matter. And one of the other reasons I say that the jerkbait is a comeback of the year for 2024 is because of all the additional new models that we're seeing. A lot of the companies that had an established jerkbait already came out with a bunch of new versions. Whether it's something like the Berkeley Stunna, where now you've got they had the regular 112 and then the 112 plus one. Now they've got the 112 plus two, which is this guy with the big lip. They came out with the 100 size, the 100 plus one. You saw companies like Megabass continue to expand on their Vision 110 line. It just seems like everybody that already had an established bait to build off of continued to expand on it. And I think that just shows how valuable of a tool it is in today's fishing world. Um, I just, for me, it's one of those things. The only time I think you may not see somebody throw a jerkbait is if the fish are strictly down below that 20-foot range. If they're in that 25, 30-foot range, there's other baits uh, like the jig head minnow that you can really get down to them. But we still see guys that are doing modifications to sink these, whether it's add bigger hooks, add additional split rings, add lead wrap, count the Berkeley Stunna down, some of your sinking jerks like the Rapala countdown minnows. The jerkbait line, the jerkbait family of baits at this point is so diverse that you can still fish them down to 30 feet if you want. There really are no limitations on them. And I feel like 2024 was just a year that solidified the jerkbait as being just probably one of the top five baits to catch bass. And when I say that, I'm saying top five baits probably in history at this point. Like, that's how good these baits are at generating strikes. And they're not just for bass, they're really good multi-species baits. The walleye anglers know that. The muskie and pike anglers catch them on jerk baits. There's even a lot of guys that like to fish for panfish and trout with really small jerk baits. So it's a very diverse bait, but at this point they've become so technically advanced versus where they were 15 years ago. that is just hard to deny it. And I personally feel like I'm not going to say we've seen the top in terms of the people using the jerkbait. I feel like we've seen a lot of the production of baits that we're going to see. I think you're going to continue to see some companies come out with new stuff, but I think a lot of the companies have such a diverse line of baits at this point that they're probably not going to continue to put a ton of their resources into continuing to develop it. With respect to Berkeley, I mean, they could come out with a smaller size than the 100. They could come out with a bigger one than the 112. Um, so maybe they continue to expand. I just feel like a lot of companies are so set on what they have right now that they're just happy with it, and they're going to keep moving forward on producing the base that they've got. But 2024, when I truly look back at the year, it was pretty amazing to see the number of both elite series tournaments as well as Bass Pro Tour events and the invitational series events and the Bassmaster Open events that utilized a jerkbait. It was wild to me. Like, if you go back and you look at all the top 10 baits, there's a lot of jig head minnows, but there are a lot of jerk baits as well. So I'm calling it. The year of 2024, the comeback bait of the year was the jerk bait. So thanks for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed today's video. If you did, hit like and subscribe. Maybe you disagree. What's your 2024 comeback bait of the year? I'd love to hear from you guys as well. Thanks for watching.